Okay, good afternoon, entrepreneurs from across Africa. Good afternoon, entrepreneurs from Nigeria, South Africa, all entrepreneurs across the 54 African countries. Welcome again to the 2024 TEF Flagship Masterclass session. Today, we'll be talking about fundamentals of raising capital for your business. And I'm honored to have Dr. Gbadebo Adenrele facilitate this session with me and with all of you on the call. So I'll just read a short bio about Dr. Gbadebo Adenrele, then Foco translate to cater to our French translators and to our Portuguese translators. We sincerely apologize. So we hope that Nadia will be able to join the session along the way as she's having issues with her internet. Okay, so Dr. Gbadebo Adenrele is the Managing Director, Investment Banking of United Capital PLC. United Capital is a prominent financial and investment service group based in Lagos, Nigeria, with offices in Accra, Ghana, and Abidjan, Ivory Coast. He has over 20 years of experience in investment banking, providing financing and advisory services to leading corporates, including Dangote Group, MTN, UBA, GT Bank, Zenith Bank, Transnational Corporation PLC, Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC, Transcorp Power PLC, Geregu Power PLC, Owando PLC, and NNPCL, amongst others, as well as governments in Nigeria and across Africa on capital markets, project finance, and restructuring deals across multiple sectors. He was previously Director and Head of Investment Banking at Vetiva Capital Management Limited, and prior to the held investment banking roles of Zenith Bank, and prior to this, held investment banking roles at Zenith Capital Limited, then a subsidiary of Zenith Bank PLC, and Kedari Capital Limited. Dr. Adenrele holds MBBS and MBA degree from the University of Lagos, an MS Global Finance degree from STEM School of Business, New York University, and HKUST Business School, Hong Kong, and has completed the Advanced Management Program of the Lagos Business School with an international module of IESE Business School, Barcelona. He is currently the Vice President of Issuing Houses of Nigeria, AIHN, the umbrella body for investment banks in Nigeria. We are honored to have you, sir. Foco, please translate.
Bonjour, chers entrepreneurs, et bienvenue à cette nouvelle session de Masterclass. Je suis Roland Foucault, mentor à la Fondation de l'Umelou et facilitateur francophone. Aujourd'hui, nous allons nous entretenir sur les fondamentaux pour une levée de fonds dans votre entreprise. Nous allons travailler avec le Dr. Adenrele, qui a une carrière assez intéressante parce qu'il a été directeur de la banque d'investissement à United Capital et il a aussi une forte carrière dans les marchés boursiers, que ce soit au Nigeria, à Accra au Ghana ou à Abidjan en Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, durant 20 ans de carrière dans la banque d'investissement, il a eu à donner des conseils dans des entreprises comme Dangote Group, MTN, UBA, Zenith Bank et bien d'autres entreprises. Il est doté d'un MBA à l'Université de Lagos et il a fait d'autres écoles comme l'Université de New York et bien d'autres. Actuellement, il est vice-président d'une association qui s'occupe de l'investissement au Nigeria. Donc, sans plus tarder, nous allons lui passer la parole afin que le masterclass puisse commencer. Over to you, doctor.
All right, thank you very much. And please confirm you can hear me clearly.
Very good.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's a privilege, and I recognize that the audience spreads across Africa, and we will go through fundamentals of raising capital for your business. I note here that there are various business leaders and entrepreneurs here from different sectors, but we try to, keep as generic as possible, but as detailed as possible within the time frame that we have. We'll go through the slides, using these slides as guidance for this presentation. We'll walk through an introduction, which really speaks to growth mindset and understanding what drives a business. A number of these you already know. We'll talk about a few things around skin in the game, which as entrepreneurs you already have a sense around. We'll talk about the big picture from a slightly different perspective. Talk about internal and initial external funding sources. We'll talk about banking financing. We'll talk about capital markets, and we'll talk about business expansion. And in conclusion, we'll find a way to summarize a lot of things, keeping in mind the key things that are important for capital raise, and we will tie in a number of them as we move along. So, Roland, do you want to summarize that?
Bon. Nous allons commencer par vous présenter le plan de cette session. On commencera par une introduction sur laquelle on fera un tour sur les attitudes que vous devez avoir en tant qu'entrepreneur, c'est-à-dire le mindset. Ensuite, on verra comment est-ce qu'on finance le capital de départ et surtout, comment est-ce qu'on ouvre le capital. Ensuite, on aura la grande image qu'il faut retenir des opérations, des affaires. À la suite, on fera comment avoir les premiers financements, quelles sont les premières sources externes de financement. À la suite, en point 5, on verra le financement bancaire avant de passer à l'accès au marché des capitaux pour aboutir au point 7, au développement de l'entreprise, puis on passera aux questions-réponses après la conclusion. Over to you.
Thank you, Roland.
Sorry, sir. Just to mention that Nadia is on the call now. She has joined, the Portuguese translator.
All right, so we'll allow Nadia to also give us some. Nadia, please, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And apologies for being late. Ok, boa tarde a todos. Primeiramente, peço desculpas por estar a chegar tarde. Ok, então, o que é que vai ser discutido nesta sessão? Esta sessão vai começar com uma introdução, onde vocês vão ter ideias de como ter a atitude certa para crescer e dirigir vossos negócios. Vai-se falar também do jogo, o que é importante para os primeiros passos de uma startup. Vai-se olhar uma visão mais ampla de como fazer os vossos negócios crescer e depois como buscar fundos externos. Vai-se falar um pouco sobre a banquerização, o acesso ao capital que é necessário para o mercado, seja através de uma doação ou através da equidade. E depois falar-se-á um pouco sobre a expansão dos negócios. Haverá uma conclusão e depois um momento para perguntas e respostas. Obrigado. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Nadia. So quickly through the introduction, like I mentioned, as entrepreneurs, what is key for you is the big picture. You started the business or you co-founded the business. The big picture is always the critical bit. You have to be organized. You have to be flexible. You have to be creative, and you have to be able to pay attention to detail. Those are some of the key parts or key characteristics that you need. And this is not new to all the entrepreneurs that are here, right? But what we also believe that's important and is critical in discussing about you accessing funding, right, is the fact that funding that is being accessed is to grow the company, is to grow the entity that you have built, right? The people at the art of building this, of running this organization also need to have a growth mindset. So, and it's that growth mindset that allows you to be open to learning and to constant improvement, embracing challenges as they come, and taking even challenges when things don't go right, taking them as an opportunity to do better, to grow, to learn that this is when there's a setback, that just gives you one teaching to say this is not the right way, and then you can spring back. And there are a couple of things that we feel are important for as part of the benefits of having this growth mindset. In the face of challenges, business enterprises always have challenges that are on the way all through, Resilience in the face of this challenge is critical, and a growth mindset is what allows you to go past all of this, right? In fact, it allows you to take those challenges as a springboard to move on. Embracing innovation and change is also critical. The business landscape continues to evolve, both from a macro perspective, from an industry perspective. There is always a flux. Things are always moving, things are always changing, and this growth mindset is critical in ensuring that you can foster a culture of, being open to ideas, being able to stay in the game, being able to be innovative, to walk around some of the challenges that will come around. And lastly, continuous learning is something that comes with a growth mindset. And this growth mindset, as we say, whilst it comes with the entrepreneur, it's also translated to the company, to the team that's working with the entrepreneur. And, as a team, all these characteristics play out, right? A company is a combination of all the people that work with them. If the entrepreneur and the key founders have this mindset, they translate it within their core team, then these characteristics are also taken by the company as a whole. Over to you, Roland and Nadia.
OK, thank you. Donc, en termes d'introduction, il est important pour vous de noter que pour se bâtir une carrière à succès d'entrepreneur, vous devez avoir une grande image, vous devez avoir le pensée grand, on appelle le big picture. Parce que c'est ce comportement qui vous permet de pouvoir faire face aux différents challenges, donc aux différents défis qui peuvent se mettre sur votre chemin. Et globalement, il est question pour vous de toujours avoir un comportement ou une nature de croissance, un esprit de croissance. Pourquoi? Parce que, ou bien, qu'est-ce qui peut vous encourager à avoir cet esprit? La première des choses sur lesquelles on a misé, c'est la résilience face aux différents défis. Donc, vous devez savoir qu'un entrepreneur, lorsqu'il a déjà pensé grand, il sera difficile pour lui de ne pas être résilient. C'est pour ça qu'on vous dit qu'il faut avoir une grosse image de vous-même, de votre projet. Cette résilience permet donc que vous soyez capable de vite faire marche arrière lorsqu'il y a des difficultés et surtout de ne jamais abandonner, faire marche arrière et de repartir des plus belles sans pour autant tomber dans le découragement ou dans les défaillances. La deuxième chose, c'est de toujours embrasser l'innovation et le changement parce que le paysage d'affaires constamment vous permet de pouvoir détecter quelles sont les nouveautés. Et ces nouveautés doivent être pour vous des opportunités que vous devez exploiter dans le cadre de votre activité. La dernière chose, c'est toujours être dans une option d'apprentissage. Parce que généralement, dans le business, on apprend tous les jours. Et c'est l'esprit d'apprentissage qui vous sert en réalité de carburant, qui vous encourage tous les jours à rester dans votre activité et à la développer. Nadia.
Thank you, Foco. Então, em jeito de introdução, o que é que vocês devem levar em consideração? É que para vocês terem uma empresa, para se ter uma empresa de sucesso, é necessário ter muito mais do que uma boa ideia. É preciso que o empreendedor seja organizado, é preciso que seja flexível e também criativo. Mas é também importante que tenha a habilidade de prestar atenção aos detalhes, sempre olhando para um panorama maior, quer dizer, para um plano mais amplo. Ok? Então, deve estar preparado e devem criar em si, ter a mentalidade de crescimento. Mas é lembrar que a empresa é muito mais do que o seu dono. A empresa também é a combinação entre o dono e o staff, ou o pessoal que tem na empresa. Portanto, essa mentalidade tem que ser passada também para os vossos colaboradores. Os colaboradores têm que beber também essa ideia de crescimento para a empresa, ok? E como é que é essa ideia de crescimento na empresa, essa mentalidade de crescimento? Essa mentalidade de crescimento passa por inclui três passos, basicamente. A resiliência, não é? Perante os desafios, nós todos sabemos que no caminho do empreendedor há sempre muitos obstáculos, portanto, há que ser resiliente, se tem em mente o crescimento. O segundo é abraçar a inovação e as mudanças. Nós, ser humano, por natureza, temos a tendência a rejeitar ou ser resistente à mudança. Há que ser o contrário disso. Nós temos que, como empreendedor que quer ter sucesso, deve abraçar a inovação e a mudança. E o último passo é o aprendizado contínuo. Quer dizer, o empreendedor que quer crescer tem que estar sempre disposto a aprender mais e a beber mais para que possa realmente fazer crescer a sua empresa. Thank you, Dr. Over to you.
Thank you, Nadia. So I'll speak to key drivers of a business. We highlighted some of the key drivers of a business, strategy being, and I'll go clockwise. Strategy is number one, and that's key for every business. There needs to be the business idea come from you, but there needs to be a strategy that would ensure that the business can be translated to meet its objectives, or that idea can be translated to meet the objectives behind it. So business strategy is critical. We also note that the business is in the market is established to be able to serve clients' needs, to be able to increase clients, the clients under your coverage, or the clients that you have, to gain more clientele. That you need to be client focused, and this is critical. How are you understanding what the clients need today, and how are you forecasting what the clients will need tomorrow, so that you can provide those services or those products for them. Finance is critical. That's the essence of what why we're speaking today, and we will move quickly after this. But just to get a sense to say, amongst all the key drivers of business, finance is critical. Finance is what allows you to fund all the strategic growth plans, right? It's what allows you to fund the expansion or the requirements to be able to meet the service and the products that are being developed for clients. So that's very critical for you to be able to have finance. And people critical. This is people I said earlier, an institution or a company is a combination of all the people that work there, and is important for us. People are the core of every business, right? And this is important for us to be able to ensure that both the internal, as employees and team, and external, the clients, there's a metrics you are able to ensure that you get right, to be able to ensure that these people are able to deliver the services or the products are being developed appropriately. Leadership is critical as well. Yes, you have the people, but the leadership that is driving, ensuring that you're working towards the common goal of the company. Technology is super important in this day, 21st century. You need to ensure there's your technology compliant. You're able to adopt the right technology, digital technology, data analytics, AI, whatever it is that is applicable to your business, to ensure your business is able to operate more efficiently. Technology is super important, and it's part of the drivers of business. A risk this cuts across all business types, across all sectors. A robust risk management framework, ensuring that you're able to identify the risk that your business is exposed to and how to mitigate them and manage them, and ensure that the right parties best positioned to manage those risks are the ones empowered to take them, and also ensuring that you're not taking risks that will be detrimental to the business. So this in the lump sum just speaks to key drivers of the business, and they're important for assessing the business. So over to you.
OK, donc nous allons voir quelques éléments clés qui peuvent vous permettre de réussir votre affaire. On va commencer par la stratégie. La stratégie est importante parce que c'est elle qui permet de mettre, on va dire, en musique tout ce que vous allez faire dans le futur de votre entreprise. Et à côté de cette stratégie, il faut directement associer la clientèle. La clientèle qui est un élément clé sur lequel on doit suffisamment se concentrer afin de la captiver et permettre qu'elle comprenne les valeurs qu'on a créées, ce qu'on appelle souvent la proposition de valeur. Il y a bien sûr l'aspect financier, qui est la quantification de toutes les opérations qu'on peut faire dans une entreprise et qui permet surtout de savoir si nous sommes en croissance ou pas. Ensuite, il y a les ressources humaines. Les ressources humaines permettent que l'entreprise puisse être véritablement fonctionnelle. Donc, dans une entreprise, tout est centré sur le personnel. À côté du personnel, on a aussi le leadership. Il est important pour vous, en tant que porteur de projet et entrepreneur, d'être de bons leaders et de savoir travailler efficacement, quel que soit le domaine dans lequel vous vous engagez. La technologie n'est pas du reste dans la mesure où, au 21e siècle où nous sommes, on ne peut rien faire sans le digital, sans la numérisation et les technologies modernes. Pour finir, vous devez avoir une bonne appréciation des différents risques et surtout, trouver les moyens pour atténuer ces risques si elles arrivent. Merci. Nadia.
Thanks, Foco. Então, nós vamos agora olhar para as chaves para conduzir um negócio que tenha como visão crescimento. Ok? O primeiro passo ou a primeira chave é a estratégia. O que é a estratégia? A estratégia é aquela coisa que vai nos manter focada no que é a ideia original do negócio. Portanto, o negócio nasce de uma ideia, mas manter a ideia em processo depende da estratégia própria. Por isso, há que ter sempre uma boa estratégia no seu negócio. A seguir, nós temos o foco no cliente. Por quê? Porque só escutando o cliente, você é capaz de desenhar soluções que vão de acordo às necessidades do teu cliente. Portanto, o foco aqui é ouvir o cliente para saber como melhorar e como manter o cliente engajado no seu negócio. Finança. Obviamente que finança é muito importante, é crítico. Aliás, é por causa das finanças que nós estamos cá hoje, nós estamos a falar de busca de financiamento, certo? Então, não há como ter um negócio visando o crescimento sem pensar nas finanças, sem olhar para os aspectos financeiros do negócio. A seguir, nós temos as pessoas. No início, nós já falamos que pessoas, que uma empresa é a combinação de vários tipos de pessoas, né? Todas as pessoas que operam nela. Então, pessoas é chave. O recurso humano é chave em qualquer negócio. Há que se ter em consideração qual é o tipo de recurso que precisamos, onde é que nós precisamos, o que é que nós podemos terceirizar, enfim. E logo isso leva-nos também à liderança, não é? Liderança, porque tem pessoas, mas há que ter a liderança certa para saber conduzir o negócio ao sucesso, para conduzir a empresa ao sucesso. A tecnologia, o que é que nos leva a pensar na tecnologia? Bem, nós já vimos que quem não inova, quem para no tempo, perde, acaba por morrer. Então, é preciso abraçar a tecnologia, é preciso envolver-se com a tecnologia para que o vosso negócio possa crescer. Buscar apoio tecnológico é crítico para qualquer negócio que queira crescer, seja a tecnologia digital, tecnologia em termos de equipamentos, enfim. A verdade é que a tecnologia é uma das chaves para o sucesso do vosso negócio. E depois nós temos o risco. Qualquer negócio tem risco. Os riscos estão em qualquer negócio. No entanto, o que é que nós devemos fazer? Como dono de negócio, nós devemos fazer uma análise de quais são os riscos que o meu negócio corre para encontrar formas de mitigar os mesmos, forma de abrandar as consequências ou a severidade daquilo que possa acontecer no negócio. Portanto, a análise do risco deve ser feita para qualquer negócio crescer com sucesso. Ok? Portanto, essas são as chaves para o negócio de sucesso. Thank you, Dr. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Nadia. I'll go faster now just to make sure that we spend time going through quickly and then having some other time for some of the sections at the end of the discussion. So bootstrapping. So skin in the game, essentially, what are we speaking about here? What do you have in here? What was the early stages? Bootstrapping is essentially using existing resources. What you're doing here, a business entrepreneur or co-founders are using resources available. They're nothing from the external to the business, right? And they're making use of their own resources that are available. And on the right side of the screen, you see we talked about a few strategies, which is personal equity, personal debt, cutting costs is probably one of the major ones, where you're cutting costs, you're just ensuring that there's very little cost, and then you're forming business relationships. There are a few stages that we've talked about for a business: beginner stage, customer funded stage, and credit stage. Just looking at things loosely. I would not spend too much time on bootstrapping. I will go also to talk about family and friends. And this is where you also get funding from family or friends. This is now you've gone outside of the current investors, but we would not go into the benefits and drawbacks so that we don't spend too much time. Family and friends are normally some of the people that will fund you at the very early stage of your business. Sometimes some businesses require that, sometimes some businesses don't. So over to you, Rolling. Let me allow you summarize the 2 slides, and I'll go to other ones afterwards.
OK, thank you. Donc, nous allons maintenant voir les différentes façons de démarrer le financement de son entreprise. Donc, on a eu à voir le bootstrapping qui n'est autre qu'une façon assez rapide de gagner de l'argent lorsqu'on démarre une entreprise. Mais notre focus va être sur la famille. Donc, il est question pour vous de comprendre que lorsque vous créez une entreprise, OK, sorry. Donc, j'étais en train de dire que pour commencer le financement d'une entreprise, vous avez le choix du bootstrapping. Vous avez le choix du bootstrapping qui est une technique de financement initial de l'entreprise. Et l'un des éléments primordiaux aussi lorsqu'on démarre une entreprise, c'est les financements qu'on reçoit de la famille et des amis. Donc, il est important pour vous de comprendre que ce sont des voies importantes de financement qui vous sont très accessibles lorsque vous démarrez une entreprise. On voulait bien attirer votre attention sur ces aspects qui ne sont pas négligés lorsqu'on se lance en entrepreneuriat. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, nós vamos começar a falar sobre as formas de atrair investimento. A primeira, o que se chama aqui em inglês o bootstrapping, que é como se calçar as botas, ok? Então, o que é isso? Essa forma é a forma mais fácil, mais prática, mais normal uso de fazer o negócio, que é basicamente conseguir fazer o seu negócio com aquilo que tem. Basicamente, você faz o negócio com aquilo que você tem, sem atrair investimento externo. É o básico, é o que quase todos nós começar a fazer negócio com aquilo que tem, sem atrair investimento externo. Depois, nós a seguir temos as família e amigos, que é a segunda forma de se atrair de investimento, ou é, na verdade, a primeira forma de atrair investimento. São aqueles que confiam em nós, normalmente, no início, quando ainda nós não demos prova, e ajudam, colocam dinheiro no negócio para nós darmos os primeiros passos. Normalmente são os nossos familiares, nossos amigos, quem contribuem primeiro para o nosso negócio. Okay? Doctor, over to you.
All right, thank you, Nadia and Rolly. So the big picture is what we really want to talk about, and here we'll move very fast as well. The key objective in all what we're going to speak about today is really how do we support the scaling of your business operations? How does capital raising, how do you access capital to be able to support the scaling of your business operations? That's why we're talking about fundamentals of raising capital. But it's also important to understand what does scaling of this business operation, what does it entail? It entails process optimization, it entails financial management, it entails workforce development, it entails partnerships and alliances, right? And I would from there, let me allow, so please, maybe you should just summarize this and then, translate this, and then I'll move on to the next slides.
OK, donc, pour ce qui concerne le développement des opérations d'une entreprise, nous voulons vous présenter juste quelques stratégies clés, comme par exemple l'optimisation des process, la gestion financière, le développement de la force de travail dans des ressources humaines et enfin les partenariats et alliances. Il est question pour vous de bien comprendre que tous ces éléments-là sont importants pour pouvoir développer votre entreprise et la mettre à l'échelle, à une plus grande échelle. Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, aqui onde nós vamos focar, que é na parte do plano mais amplo, qual é o processo, qual é a estratégia para escalar a vossa operação. Passa por um processo de otimização, a gestão financeira, o desenvolvimento da força motriz, ou seja, do recurso humano da empresa, e também a parceria que se deve estabelecer. Ok? Thank you, Doctor. Over to you.
All right, thank you. As you see, so initial external funding is what we want to go to. I will speak to the external funding. Then we'll spend a bit more time when we're talking about credits. But first, angel investors. And who is an angel investor? Is a person who provides capital to a business, normally startups, and very early stage. Sometimes it receives convertible debt, sometimes it's direct equity that the angel investor has. An angel investor will generally not be your normal banks or some of those institutions, but there are angel investors that are able to give businesses support in very early stages of the business growth. I will also speak to the business incubators as well. These are nurturing grounds. They help to allow startups and new businesses and even businesses that have been for a while, grow beyond where they are currently at. And that allows them to, on the first page, very early ones incubate, and some that are already in existence can now, grow faster. And that's why the term acceleration is there. I'll move to the other ones, and we'll still get the translation after. Venture capital and private equity, you see these are more institutional sources of funding as well. And what you find is the sizes of investments that come from them is larger, more structure, more institutionalization, and they are able to look at the business opportunities, do their due diligence, and then invest in companies in a bit more structured manner. Most times minority stakes, sometimes they take significant minority. Bank financing, a lot of people this is popular. A lot of people understand, accessing money from a bank, but we'll speak about, this. So sometimes a loan, sometimes a line of credit, sometimes it's trade finance, sometimes it's commercial mortgage as well. And when let me allow the team speak to, let me allow the translation for these slides that I've spoken to before now, and then we'll come to the 5 C's of credit.
Donc, en point 4,
please proceed.
OK, thank you. Donc, en point 4, nous allons voir quelques sources initiaux de capitaux qui sont externes. On a par exemple vu les business angels. Les business angels qui sont des personnes, en français c'est anges de l'affaires, ce sont des personnes qui mettent de l'argent dans votre projet parce qu'ils sentent votre projet. Donc, ils ont du begin pour votre projet et ils décident d'y mettre de l'argent. Nous avons maintenant les accélérateurs. Les accélérateurs sont aussi une sorte les incubateurs et les accélérateurs qui sont une sorte d'institution qui vous accompagne dans la création et la croissance de votre entreprise. Vous avez aussi, please, you can move on. Vous avez aussi les venture capitalistes ou bien les equity. Dans les venture capitalistes, les capitaux risques. Donc, ce sont des institutions qui ont pour habitude de mettre de l'argent dans les entreprises qui viennent de démarrer. Ça, c'est leur métier. Donc, ne vous posez pas trop la question de pourquoi. C'est leur métier de mettre de l'argent dans des entreprises qui viennent de démarrer. On a aussi les entreprises qui viennent et qui rentrent dans votre capital, ce qu'on appelle les equity. Ils rentrent dans votre entreprise, ils prennent une partie du capital, ils permettent à votre entreprise de grandir et après, ils ressortent. Donc, voilà quelques institutions qui vous permettent de pouvoir faire grandir votre entreprise en termes de capitaux externes de démarrage d'une entreprise. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Foco. Então, aqui agora nós vamos onde o nosso foco deve estar, que é no investimento, no fontes externas de investimento. A primeira fonte que nós vamos olhar é para o investidor anjo. O que é o investidor anjo? É aquela pessoa que acredita no vosso negócio na fase inicial, quando ainda não há muita prova de que o negócio vai ter sucesso, mas ele, olhando para o vosso prognóstico, acredita que o negócio vai dar certo e decide investir no negócio. Portanto, investidor anjo é aquela pessoa que investe nas primeiras fases do negócio. Depois nós temos as incubadoras e aceleradoras de negócios, onde basicamente a incubadora é onde as startups começam a dar os seus primeiros passos, têm todo o apoio ali para ajudá-las a crescer. Quase sempre o apoio é mais em forma de capacitação, acompanhamento, enfim. O aceleradora é onde as empresas já estão um pouquinho mais desenvolvidas, estão querem estar na fase da aceleração, quer dizer, um crescimento rápido, tem esse apoio nessas instituições. Depois disso, nós temos o capital de risco e a equidade. Nesse aspecto, o que acontece aqui? O que acontece aqui de diferente indiferente em relação aos anjos, investidor de anjo, é que aqui, normalmente, a parte da empresa que é cedida em troca do investimento. O dinheiro é dado e algumas ações da empresa, alguma parte da empresa é cedida, isso dependendo da negociação. Portanto, essas são as fontes principais de investimento de fora. E a seguir nós temos também a banca, que nós vamos olhar mais em detalhe de seguida. Doctor, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so on the bank financing, and this is where you come to debt, right? So a few things are critical. If you're looking to access funding from any financing institution from a debt perspective, there's what is called the 5 C's of credit. So they're looking at the character, they're looking at the capacity, they're looking at the capital, they're looking at the collateral, and they're looking at the conditions, right? And for character, you know, the bank is looking and saying, what's your reputation like? What's your track record in repaying other people that you've raised money from? Character is perhaps the most important part of the credit process, because what you want to be able to ensure is anybody that looks at you is able to identify that there's good character from the founders of the business, and that is a key thing that providers of funding will always look at. Capacity is also important because the business, what's the ability of the business to repay the loan, right? This is super important. Not only banks use it, any other institutional, private equity, venture, as long as they're providing a loan, as long as the loan form, right? You want to be able to assess how is the company able to repay the loan. This is important, and you have to be able to show it. It has to be clear that you can do this. Capital is also seen to say how much capital has been put into this business. Have the funders, have the current owners of the business, have they capitalized the business well enough? Have they put in their own equity? Have they provided enough funding for this business on its own for it to now raise additional or raise debt from other parties? Collateral is like security, is like what is being used to secure the money that is being raised from the bank or from the institution that wants to lend. And a number of times, the collateral is always important in the very early stage to say, what kind of collateral do you have? Is it hard collateral? Is it some form of structuring that allows the bank or the lender to have some comfort that, if anything goes wrong, there's a recourse from a lending perspective. And what are the conditions? What are the terms of the loan? What's the what are the other conditions that will influence how the borrower is able to utilize this loan or this lending? I think this is a key part of accessing any kind of funding from lenders, and it's important that companies, entrepreneurs have a sense around how the lenders will look at them and also prepare for that assessment. So, Roland, you can go ahead, and then followed by Nadia.
OK, thank you. Donc, au niveau du financement bancaire, qui est le point 5, vous devez savoir que généralement, les banquiers regardent 5 choses que nous allons matérialiser par les 5 C en anglais. La première chose, c'est le caractère. La deuxième, c'est votre capacité à rembourser. Le troisième, c'est le capital. Le quatrième, c'est la garantie. Et le dernier, c'est les conditions. En termes de caractère, il est question de savoir quelle est votre notoriété, quelle est la fiabilité que la banque peut avoir vis-à-vis de vous. Est-ce que vous avez une bonne réputation en termes de crédit? Au niveau de la capacité, quelle est votre capacité à rembourser le crédit que vous voulez prendre? La banque a intérêt à vérifier ça, autant que le capital. Quand vous voulez prendre un crédit bancaire, vous devez savoir exactement quel est l'investissement que vous devez faire. c'est l'une des conditions primordiales. L'argent va servir à quoi? Donc, généralement, c'est un argent qu'on prête pour pouvoir avoir des actifs, acquérir des actifs. Ça, vous devez bien signifier. Au niveau des garanties, vous devez savoir que les conditions de banque vous imposent de toujours avoir une couverture du crédit que vous prenez. Ce qui fait qu'au cas où l'opération se passe mal, ce n'est pas le banquier qui doit perdre son argent. Vous devez être capable d'avoir une sécurité. Et cette sécurité-là, vous la mettez à disposition du banquier. La dernière chose, le dernier, c'est les conditions. Donc, généralement, lorsqu'on vous accorde un crédit bancaire, il y a les conditions, ça peut être le taux, la durée, le différé et ainsi de suite, qui sont des éléments sur lesquels vous vous basez avant de vous décider. Donc, c'est important pour vous de savoir que voilà les éléments que généralement les banquiers regardent et doivent pouvoir percevoir ça de vous avant de vous faire confiance. Nadia.
Thanks, Foco. Então, entrando na banca, nós temos esse processo de 5 Cs, que em inglês, que os bancos normalmente usam para avaliar e para poderem dar ou não o crédito. O primeiro C, que é o caráter, tem a ver com o histórico vosso com o banco. O banco vai olhar qual é o vosso histórico, se já fizeram crédito no passado, se pagaram, se demoraram a pagar, enfim. Basicamente, a vossa relação com o banco. A seguir, nós temos a capacidade, que quer dizer, ou basicamente, avaliar a vossa capacidade de pagar esse valor que vocês estão a solicitar. Ok? Depois nós temos o capital, que é o próprio valor, o dinheiro a ser solicitado. Nós temos o colateral, que é a garantia, qual é a garantia que vocês têm, que o banco pode ter de que para assegurar ou vos dar o empréstimo. E, no fim, nós temos as condições, que é basicamente as condições definidas entre porque este empréstimo vai haver um contrato, uma relação entre as duas entidades, então quais são as condições que vão estar nesse contrato. Então, basicamente, esses são os 5 aspectos que são avaliados pelo banco para ceder ou não o crédito. Dr. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll just go over to access to capital markets. And the capital markets, there are 2 parts to the capital markets. So we talked about bank financing and the likes. We will talk about capital markets now, where you have debt capital markets and equity capital markets. On the right, I will just give a sense around what's the relevance of capital markets to an economy. It allows you to, resource allocation, funding for businesses and government, economic growth, liquidity, and economic indicators. This applies to all forms, to the markets in general, right? But in the capital markets, you have a bit more structure around having a bond market. And sometimes you're also able to have convertible debt or convertible bonds. And you also have short-term funding from commercial papers. And these are all different types of debt issuances. I will not go into those details. I would also speak to, on the equity side, right? On the equity capital markets, what are the different times? A number of times you would have heard about initial public offering, you have heard about direct listing, you have heard about private placement, you would have heard about rights issues. But this is all about ownership in a company, right? There are routes through which ownership in a company can be sold to new investors through an IPO, or you have a direct listing where equity in a company is listed on an exchange. Also, you could have a private placement where you have a private arrangement with investors for them to take equity or shares in a company. With a rights issue, it's really just focused on the existing shareholders of the company, right? And I mentioned these are the 2 sides of the capital market. On the debt side, you have bonds. Bonds are longer term debt instruments. It could be a government raising it, it could be a company raising it, but these are the platform, or the market is already developed, and both government and private sector can raise debt. And same applies for a convertible debt or convertible bond as it is. And that's really a debt that can be converted to equity, to ownership. And commercial papers are shorter term, most times less than 9 months instruments. Most times the bonds and the convertible bonds are longer term, sometimes 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. That's the period for those. So let's have translation for both the debt capital market and equity capital market in quick summary, and we go to the meat of the day. But it's important to lay these backgrounds.
OK.
So, Rolling, yeah.
Donc, en sixième point, nous allons voir les marchés financiers. Vous devez savoir qu'il y a deux types de marchés. Il y a le marché de la dette et le marché des actions. Dans le marché de la dette, vous avez plusieurs types, comme par exemple les obligations. Et vous avez aussi les obligations ou les dettes convertibles, bien évidemment en actions. Et vous avez maintenant les documents commerciaux, qui sont des documents qui vous permettent plus de gérer vos pics de trésorerie ou bien vos manquements en termes de trésorerie sur le court terme. Ça peut être 3 mois, ça peut être 6 mois. Alors que les obligations, ça va à 3 ans, 5 ans, 7 ans, voire même 10 ans. Donc voilà le marché de la dette. En face, vous avez Next Please. En face, vous avez le marché des actions, le marché du capital proprement dit, c'est-à-dire des actions. Et dans ce marché-là, next slide, please. Dans ce marché-là, vous avez les actions, vous avez les IPO, c'est-à-dire que l'offre initiale en termes de vente d'actions, vous avez les placements privés, vous avez les placements directs et vous avez aussi d'autres droits. Donc, ça veut dire que globalement, sur les marchés financiers, vous avez deux types de marchés. Vous avez le marché des actions qui impacte directement la propriété de l'entreprise, c'est ce qu'on appelle le capital. Et vous avez maintenant le marché des dettes, c'est-à-dire c'est de l'argent que vous prenez aux gens et vous les remboursez, quel que soit le résultat que vous allez faire. Alors que dans le marché des actions ou du capital, la rémunération tient compte des résultats qui sont faits par l'entreprise. Donc, on n'ira pas dans plus de détails, vous aurez tous ces supports. Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. A previous slide, please. Ok, nós vamos falar agora do mercado financeiro. O mercado financeiro pode ser de duas formas, ou em forma de dívida ou em forma das ações. Como é que acontece em forma de dívida? Em forma de dívida, basicamente, o dinheiro é dado a uma relação com quem cedeu o dinheiro e há um documento, que é um documento que vincula as duas partes e esse documento que mantém essa ligação até que esse valor é pago. Tem as suas vantagens e desvantagens, mas é uma forma de se fazer, pelo menos assegura-se aqui na totalidade a empresa, ok? A segunda forma, que é as ações. Next slide, please. No que se refere às ações, já aqui há uma troca em relação ao dinheiro dado em troca de partes da empresa ou ações da empresa. E essa ações, o valor da ação da empresa pode ser atribuído de diversas formas. Ele pode ser através de uma oferta pública, ok? Que se define o valor da ação da empresa. Ela também pode ser uma forma direta, onde a própria entidade define qual é o valor das ações da empresa, sem ir ao público, sem fazer essa oferta pública. Pode ser através de uma entidade privada fazer essa definição, ou pode ser também através de olhar para quem já faz parte da empresa e atribuir mais ação equiparente ao valor da sua contribuição monetária. Portanto, essas são as formas como a ação ou a equidade é vista nas empresas. Doctor, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll just quickly speak to, increasing market share. What are the key things around increasing market share? We have talked about the big picture, the strategic focus of every business owner. Access to funding is critical for the different stages of a business life cycle. That access to funding is what catalyzes, growth. It ensures that you have the capital to grow. A couple of views around what needs to be done to be able to increase market share and be able to grow. So market penetration on one side, market expansion is another side. Brand positioning, very important, and your competitive positioning in the market, in the competitive space is also very important. But we will just allow this, maybe we should speak to this, maybe I should allow translation of this. So market penetration, market expansion, brand positioning, competitive analysis. constantly checking what the competitive environment is like and ensuring that you're able to differentiate your offerings. That's what you need to be able to do under your competitive assessment. Under the brand positioning, you need to be able to ensure that you strengthen your brand identity. Very important for your marketing and communication skills, ensuring that your brand is perceived as a premium brand, as a good brand, there's a positive connotation to your brand, and that translates to how your clients would receive it, both from a customer perspective, but also from the perspective of even funding those that are going to provide funding. Market expansion is also important. You're in the market you're in now, you need to look at what are the new markets that you need to target, both from a geographic perspective, customer perspective, just ensuring you have the right research that is done. You can see I'm walking back. Market penetration is also the current market you're in, just ensuring that you can increase your share of that market, increase your sales in that with the products you have in your current market. So I just walk back there. But please, Nadia and Roland and Nadia, please, you can do the translation now.
OK. Donc, la croissance de vos parts de marché est ce qu'on doit retenir pour ce qui est de la grosse image que vous devez avoir de votre entreprise. Donc, un peu comme la vision ou la big picture. On vous a dit c'est une attitude que vous devez avoir constamment. C'est pour ça qu'on a besoin d'argent au sein de l'entreprise. Et pour ça, on partage avec vous 4 stratégies qui permettent d'avoir plus de parts de marché. Il y a par exemple la stratégie de pénétration du marché, la stratégie d'expansion du marché, la stratégie de son brand positioning, c'est-à-dire le positionnement de sa marque, qui est aussi très important. Et enfin, une stratégie qui vous permet de toujours faire une analyse de la concurrence afin de vous savoir comment réagir vis-à-vis de vos concurrents. Donc, globalement, retenez que lorsqu'on veut faire croître une entreprise, lorsqu'on veut développer son entreprise, il est important de toujours gagner des parts de marché. Nadia.
Thanks, Foco. Então, quando falamos de como aumentar a presença no mercado, nós temos que pensar no plano amplo, ok? Então, o crescimento. E esse crescimento pode ser alcançado através de uma estratégia que inclui a penetração no mercado, onde você tenta aumentar a venda do produto que você tem no mesmo mercado onde está, ou a expansão do mercado, onde você vai além do teu mercado geográfico, portanto, vai a novos mercados, o posicionamento da vossa marca, onde você tem que trabalhar para que a vossa marca seja uma marca forte, uma marca presente. E nós temos a análise competitiva, ou seja, você tem que analisar o que você está a fazer, o que o teu concorrente está a fazer, qual é a tua presença no mercado e como você pode trabalhar nisso. E se for necessário, voltar atrás para a penetração, enfim, e trabalhar em conjunto, basicamente, através desses quatro aspectos da estratégia para aumentar a vossa presença no mercado. Dr. over to you.
Okay, so I won't say in conclusion, but I say, how do we tie all of this in, right? Let's look at this. And this is probably, if you're going to take anything away from this session, please let's look at this and let's understand. This just shows a graph of the life cycle. What's the company life cycle, right? What's the life cycle of a company? It's important to be able to say, this is how a company grows from early stage, right? Stage 1 to stage 6, right? And this is important to be able, this is one of the life cycle graphs that shows how a company does from stage 1, where the company has just started. It's really an idea, and there's a need for it in the market. The unmet demands, right? And at this stage, what are the funding sources, right? Bootstrapping, like we mentioned, family and friends, crowdfunding, those are the areas, those are how you will get funding for this at this early stage, right? And this is, you're moving from that light bulb idea to a bit more of a momentum or to more of a business, right? And you can see from ground zero, where it's just an idea and you're moving into a business. That's what stage one is about. And you see that the revenue starts growing from there, and earnings is still negative at this point. If you look here, there's really no revenue at this point. Towards the end, can you see my cursor? I hope some revenue starts moving up here. But here, the earnings are negative here because, you know, profit after tax, as you call it, they're still, you're putting in costs at this point, right? You're still negative. Now, on the second stage, it's the young, this is a young growth stage, and you're moving from this business to, you know, you're making a lot more progress here, right? It's still at a young growth stage. And what you have here, you're creating a business model that has gone from that's converting those ideas into potential revenue and earnings. Yeah, and you can see that the revenue is coming up, and there's a bit more revenue here. Revenue is in the positive terrain, right? This is the x-axis, right? And on the x-axis is zero, right? And anything below the x-axis is negative. You can see the earnings, which is profit level, is still negative in this young growth stage. And where do you get funding from here? This is seed funding, and this is venture capital. Early stage, you know, this idea has moved to a business and is now making is making a lot more progress. Now, the third stage is a high growth stage, right? In this high growth stage, there's a lot of growth, both at the revenue level, the earnings level, both are already positive. Remember, at the tail end of the young stage, growth is already high. You're building the business and converting the potential into revenue properly. You're scaling up. This is where you're really scaling up, and you are, and the business is really in high growth. So, and you can see here, high growth. This is a very high growth company. It's very, very important that you see that this is the stage where a lot is going on, and that is evident in the numbers, in the financials and all that. You see a lot of venture capital is able to fund you here. Private equity is able to fund you here. Private debt is able to fund you here. Bank financing are also banks are also able to fund you here. That's not written here, but banks are also able to spot this and start looking at funding you, because revenue is high and earnings are also high. But because it's early stage, sometimes they're saying, let's see what exactly where things are. But banks are also able to finance here. On the mature growth stage, right? The revenues are also growing. You're also growing the business, and you're shifting from losses to profits clearly. And here, private equity is still able to fund. Bank funding also come. A lot more capital market options are now available. And remember, we didn't go into those details, but the capital market is able to pull funding from the market, both institutional and retail investors, and able to pull them to fund companies in this stage. And from this stage, you now have the mature, stable stage. Remember, if you see here, the midlife, you know, a company that has done a lot of high growth is already on the mature growth stage. At this midlife, this is what you call the midlife, and then the growth starts slowing down here, right? They're trying to defend the business from new competitors and find new markets. You're still able to get funding from banks. You're able to get capital market funding. And then after that, you see revenues are dipping. The revenues have started dipping in the mature, stable stage, and they start to dip further in the decline stage, and it scales down. These companies are scaling down their business as the market shrinks, either from the opportunities going down, or a lot of new competitors have come into the market, and that has reduced the opportunities. They're still able to get bank funding and capital market options. A lot of restructurings take place at this stage, and sometimes those restructurings are able to get companies that are in this stage to, you know, have some additional extra life. If you allow me to say that, some additional extra length to their life cycle from some restructuring. Now, this life cycle diagram is taken from Aswad Damodaran, one of the finance professors that uses this to explain how companies' life cycle take place. And this really happens, and you can see that a number of companies that have grown over the years will go through these stages. A lot of our companies here are at this early stage, but this is also to let you know that you are looking to raise capital, you're looking to improve your capital raising abilities, your access to capital, so that you can get to these high growth and mature growth stages. I reckon a number of our audience are stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 2 most likely, and then this is the next vista. This is where you are looking at, and it takes and there's a lot of positive view there. Let's speak to that. Let's get the translation for that, and then we'll go to the next slide.
Before
Okay.
Foko goes, just to mention, Foko, one second. Nadia has internet issues, so shortly after Foko goes, so you can take on from there.
Okay, all right.
Ok, donc pour conclure, nous allons partager avec vous cette courbe de vie, ce cycle de vie des entreprises où vous pouvez distinguer pratiquement 6 phases. Et à chaque phase va correspondre une source de financement. On peut par exemple distinguer qu'il y a la phase de démarrage, il y a la phase de début de croissance, la phase de forte croissance, la phase de maturité, la phase de maturité en croissant, la phase de maturité stable et enfin la phase de déclin. Vous allez remarquer que dans chaque phase, les différents types de financement que nous vous avons expliqués interviennent. Et c'est là où vous pouvez distinguer, là où il y a le bootstrapping, là où il y a le financement qui sont faits par les familles, par la famille et les amis, le crowdfunding, c'est-à-dire que la foule, quand vous avez besoin de financement, là, tout ça, c'est au niveau du démarrage. Voilà le type de financement dont vous avez besoin. Au niveau de maintenant du début de croissance, vous verrez que c'est là où il intervient les seed funds comme celui de la Fondation Tony Melou ou bien les venture capitalistes. C'est-à-dire, sont des gens qui aiment le risque. Donc, ils ont des financements qui sont propres à venir dans des entreprises qui ont déjà commencé un peu à comprendre le business et à avoir des premiers marchés. À la suite, lorsque vous êtes dans une phase de forte croissance, c'est là où les venture capitalistes vont continuer, donc les capitaux risqueurs vont continuer à vous faire confiance, mais vous aurez maintenant des fonds qui viendront et qui vont s'intéresser à votre capital. Donc, ils vont rentrer dans le capital pour pouvoir, quand vous les acceptez dans votre capital, ils sont prêts à mettre des sommes souvent illimitées à votre disposition parce qu'ils ont confiance en votre projet. Et bien évidemment, ils prennent le contrôle d'une partie de votre projet. Et il y a aussi ici l'endettement des privés qui peut être sollicité. Au niveau de la phase 4, vous allez vous retrouver avec cette fois-ci des fonds qui peuvent venir bien évidemment de la banque. C'est à ce niveau-là que la banque intervient. Vous avez toujours les private equity, donc des fonds qui peuvent rentrer dans votre capital. Et c'est à ce niveau que vous pouvez aussi avoir accès au marché boursier parce que votre entreprise est en forte croissance. Et à la phase 5, là où la maturité est stable, vous avez toujours l'accès au marché des capitaux, à d'autres options de financement, ainsi bien qu'au financement bancaire. Et pour finir, lorsque votre entreprise est déjà en déclin, vous pouvez avoir toujours accès au financement bancaire, accès au marché boursier, au cas où on peut réussir à relever votre entreprise. Donc voilà globalement là où on peut conclure en termes d'accès au financement dans une entreprise. Over to you, doctor.
All right.
I'm back in.
Okay, Nadia. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ok, então, em sumário, temos este gráfico que é basicamente o ciclo de vida de uma empresa. É a parte essencial desta sessão de hoje. Por favor, tentem levar isso, ao menos isso convosco. Como vocês veem, a empresa começa na primeira fase, ela pode estar negativa, quer dizer, não está a dar lucro, ou está mesmo um zero. E essa fase é a fase onde nós falamos de que nós começamos com capital próprio, ou com o apoio de famílias e amigos, e depois ali a empresa vai crescendo e vai passando por diferentes fases de crescimento, ok? Aqui tem um crescimento jovem, um crescimento mais grande, um crescimento maduro, um crescimento estável, enfim. E nessas fases diferentes há altura certa para cada tipo de investimento. Como vê, o investimento através do capital semente ou através do capital de risco vem na fase 2, mas outros investimentos, o banco, só vem na fase 4 e em diante. Portanto, basicamente, este é um gráfico que nos ajuda a ver, analisar para a nossa empresa, ok? E fazer uma avaliação de em que momento, qual é o tipo, onde buscar o capital para fazer crescer o negócio. E atenção que, normalmente, por naturalidade, a empresa chega a uma fase que ela começa a descer, ou seja, deixa de gerar lucros e começa a ter lucros mais mínimos. Então, nessa fase, nós temos que olhar ou para o banco ou para um capital de risco ou equidade para poder alavancar novamente o negócio. Então, levem este gráfico como a vossa, ou pelo menos a coisa principal que levam desta formação de hoje, tá? Obrigado. Doctor, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So next, so like I said, very important you have a sense, you have an understanding of the slide we showed earlier on. But let's go into some of the things I know that you are all looking out for in this session. And it's important that we give all the background. Yes, you spent a bit of time. The last slide is very important so that you understand where your business is in the life cycle, the general life cycle of a company. Note that life cycles will differ for different companies. Some companies that are very technologically oriented will go up and down, in a very short time frame. Some other companies will take a bit longer time, just because it takes, with technology, you can ramp up your revenue very quickly. But let's go straight to business presentation. Why is business presentation important? It's normally your first shot at, and this is what you call your pitch or your pitch book or your business presentation as well. Yeah, the content is very important, right? And it's important that in that content, you should be able to make a lot of impact. You should be able to be concise. You should be able to be clear in what you're communicating. You should be able to engage your audience and leave a lasting impression. It's an opportunity to ensure that they get the message. So content is important. You must sell yourself as an entrepreneur, as a team that is building, that has set up the company. You must be able to sell yourself, right? Next is you should be able to talk about why is your product or your service, why is it different? What's different about it, right? And there must be an understanding of the market. You must provide understanding of the market where you're in and the competition, the competitive environment. There must be some basic financials, revenue, cost, profit, what are the costs, the different items, basic financials that the audience, the investors are able to quickly understand right there and then, right? And you should be able to communicate who are your partners, who are your past investors, who are your current investors, who are your advisors, where is the ecosystem that you work with. You must showcase your product and your service very, very distinctly, and that's very important. I think that content is really important for your business presentation. And regarding your business presentation, what are you looking at? And that's what we've termed as the key themes, right? What are you looking to be able to do when you're making this presentation? You must be able to show what the bottom line is. What's the for every slide, for every page you're talking to, what is critical there, right? What are you trying to communicate? The delivery must be, you must practice again and ensure that the delivery is flawless. The content should be outstanding. You must make sure that in your presentation, you do so well in ensuring that you present your content very well. Short and concise is always very good. Keep it very simple, but ensure that the information is in there. And you must practice your process. You must practice your delivery. We've talked about flawless delivery, but you must practice over and over again so that you ensure there are no gaps anywhere, and it's able to be received well by the audience. Practice is very key. It's sometimes you say that you should be able to have a 30-second pitch. That's what you call your elevator pitch. You tell the person, this is what we do. We are XYZ company. This is what we deliver. In 30 seconds is over. In a 5 minutes, you can also have a pitch where you summarize in 5 minutes, this is what our company is about. And a more extensive pitch should be like a 30-minute pitch. Within a 30-minute period, you also get the attention of the investors or whoever you're speaking to, and nothing more than that 30 minutes, so that after that, they're able to engage, they're able to take in everything you've said. Over to the translators.
Donc, une dernière chose, c'est la présentation de votre entreprise, ce que nous appelons communément le pitch. Donc, vous devez savoir que pour réussir une levée de fonds, vous devez avoir une très bonne présentation de votre projet. Et comme contenu, il y a bien évidemment votre propre présentation. Vous devez pouvoir montrer quels sont les services ou les produits que vous mettez à disposition du marché. Vous devez pouvoir montrer votre compréhension du marché et de la concurrence, pouvoir indiquer les projections financières et les états clés, financiers clés de votre entreprise, qui sont vos partenaires, qui sont vos investisseurs, ainsi que vos conseils. Vous devez aussi avoir une bonne présentation. Ça peut être la démo, ça peut être l'échantillon, ça peut être un prototype de votre produit ou bien des images de votre produit. Donc, voilà un peu le contenu de ce qu'on peut avoir dans votre présentation. Et globalement, votre présentation doit être axée sur l'éloquence de votre façon de parler, sur la pertinence des thèmes que vous allez utiliser. Vous devez être très concis et vous devez avoir des variantes. Ça peut être une présentation rapide qu'on appelle souvent le pitch, elevator pitch, donc une présentation très rapide en 30 secondes ou 1 minute. Ça peut être une présentation de 5 minutes en fonction de l'audience ou une présentation de 30 minutes. Et là, il sera question pour vous d'être capable de captiver l'attention des gens pendant 30 minutes au point où après, ils soient à même à s'engager, donc à adhérer totalement à votre projet. Et dans l'ensemble, retenez une chose, pour avoir un pitch ou une présentation réussie, c'est la pratique. Vous devez énormément pratiquer, d'aller tester, essayer plusieurs fois au point d'avoir une bonne maîtrise de votre présentation. Nadia.
Thanks, Socorro. Então, nós agora vamos falar sobre a apresentação, ok? O sucesso de qualquer tentativa de arrecadar fundo depende de como você apresenta o seu negócio. Então, há várias formas de apresentação para poder buscar financiamento. No entanto, uma coisa é certa, ela tem que ser sempre clara, tem que ser concisa, ela tem que ser endereçada à audiência certa. Ou seja, o conteúdo deve ser de acordo com a audiência que está ali para que você consiga alcançar os seus objetivos. Em termos de conteúdo, o que é que deve ter? Você deve aproveitar nessa apresentação, vender-se a si mesmo. Você deve dar a conhecer qual é o produto ou serviço que você tem a apresentar. Você tem que demonstrar que tem um entendimento do que é o mercado onde você está inserido e o que é que os concorrentes fazem. Você tem que ter uma base financeira que possa demonstrar e também se tiver parceiros, tiver investidores que já tiveram, você tem que apresentar. E, se for possível, se já tiver um produto ou um serviço que possa demonstrar, ótimo, excelente, você deve fazer. Mas atenção, que procurar ser sempre bastante conciso, eficaz, rápido e sem estar a engasgar. Essa é a forma que você conseguirá levar e vender o seu peixe da melhor forma, ok? Doctor, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So in fundraising, in capital raising, I'll speak to a couple of things there, and it's important that you understand that the effectiveness of capital raising has a number of things that influence it, right? The most important, and I'll say, is management. And if you're going to leave anything, if you're going to take away anything from what we're speaking, our discussion today, any investor looking at the opportunity or looking at you or speaking to you wants to have an assessment of your business. So a couple of things they will look at. They'll say the most important characteristics they're trying to look at. They're looking at management. They're also looking at the business model, right? But what is very important is who is driving this business? What's the team driving this business? The number of things they're trying to look at. The management team is the most important. The board of directors, advisory board, that nexus of the people that are running the company is what an investor really is looking at. If you look at the business model, a good business model is also very good. A strong business model is also very good, but a very strong management will trump a business model, because a strong management will identify even where the business model can be improved. They will improve on it. Where the market situation has changed, they will make the necessary changes to their approach to engaging the market. So the first and most critical thing is the management team, and very important to just ensure that that management team has the right experience, the right culture, teamwork, leadership. These are critical items that you need to ensure. It's also very good to also have a board of advisors, an advisory board. And sometimes you look at the sector in which you're in and find who are the key people, who are the very experienced people that can provide technical support, provide advice, and that's an advisory board. There's a structure to that. But of course, the governance process is to have a board of directors, and it's important to have good governance. A board of directors actually is critical, and the board of directors gives guidance to the management team. So that team is very important. That will be the first and most important bit to look at and ensure that you have that in place. Second is what's the total market, right? What's the total addressable market? Please ignore what's on the screen regarding those numbers; those will change. But a rough handle is always the total addressable market for your business. Could it be as large as a $20 billion total addressable market? Because it gives a sense around what are you looking, what's the big pie, and how are you able to get your portion, or how is that company able to get that portion from that pie? And now you also look at what's the group of investors. Who are the people that are already invested in the business or exited the business already, right? It gives a sense to investors to say, who are these entities, who are these people that have actually invested in you and have been able to exit, or that are currently invested in your business. And if you don't have any of those past investors, that's still fine, right? And that business model that you have, is it a disruptive business model? Is it a business that comes and changes the landscape of the sector or the industry in which you're in? These are just some of the key things that, from a fundraising perspective, investors will be looking at. But just to reiterate again, a critical component to this is the management team, right? What's the management team? What's the experience? What's the track record? How long have they worked together? What kind of things? Have they even failed somewhere and also bounced back, right? Those are critical, positive things that investors will be looking at. But how are they working together? What's their experience? Teamwork, leadership, those are important. And the kind of culture that they're built together. Very important. And we'll talk about how some of this will be assessed by investors in the subsequent slides. So over to Rolling and Nadia.
Donc, pour réussir une levée de fonds, il y a aussi un certain nombre d'éléments à prendre en considération, comme par exemple la gouvernance. La gouvernance ici, c'est toutes les personnes qui interviennent pour l'administration de l'entreprise. Ça peut être les membres du conseil d'administration, ça peut être le membre du conseil de surveillance ou les différents conseils qui interviennent au sein de votre entreprise, c'est-à-dire les auditeurs, les experts comptables, les avocats. Donc, voilà des éléments clés qui peuvent jouer en votre faveur ou en votre défaveur au sein d'une entreprise. Donc, ce sont des caractéristiques très importantes qu'on regarde dans une affaire lorsqu'on parle de levée de fonds, surtout à un certain stade. Donc, l'autre chose, c'est le marché global, c'est-à-dire que pour pouvoir investir dans votre entreprise ou vous donner des prêts importants, les investisseurs ou les prêteurs doivent savoir que vous avez un potentiel de croissance qui est assez grand, qui est assez vaste. C'est pour ça que tout à l'heure, on parlait de parts de marché. Vous devez avoir des techniques pour acquérir des parts de marché. Donc, ça doit être évident que votre entreprise doit être dans un secteur où il y a délibérément du marché. Et ce marché, il doit être très grand. La troisième chose, c'est un peu les différentes personnes qui peuvent intervenir dans le financement. Ça peut être une syndication de plusieurs investisseurs. Ça veut dire que si le montant que vous devez lever a atteint un certain niveau, plusieurs personnes peuvent se mettre ensemble. Et à ce moment, il est aussi important d'avoir l'histoire de votre financement. Qui sont les personnes qui ont déjà mis l'argent dans votre entreprise? Comment est-ce que ces personnes ont été satisfaites ou bien quel est leur comportement? Voilà des choses qu'il est aussi important de mettre au devant ou bien que vos interlocuteurs vont regarder lorsqu'ils ont besoin d'investir dans votre projet. La dernière chose, c'est d'avoir un modèle économique assez percutant et assez impressionnant, ou pour ne pas dire innovant. Donc, c'est une chose importante parce que vous le savez bien, c'est le modèle économique qui détermine comment est-ce que l'entreprise gagne de l'argent. Et aucune personne, aucun investisseur ne vous mettra l'argent à disposition sans avoir compris ou bien sans avoir eu confiance en votre capacité, soit à générer un modèle économique, soit à votre capacité de manager un modèle économique qui est déjà mis en place. Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, há uma série de critérios que normalmente são considerados em qualquer momento que há arrecadação de fundo. Portanto, quem dá o dinheiro, há critérios que eles obedecem. Esses critérios ajudam-os a definir ou se avançam ou não avançam com esse investimento. Então, o primeiro desses critérios é o pessoal, é a gerência, quem está à frente da empresa, os diretores, a equipa de gestão da empresa, o conselho de direção, enfim, vai se olhar para essas pessoas e ver quem são as pessoas, quais são os perfis dela, como é que a estrutura da empresa funciona, qual é a relação de equipa, enfim, tudo isso é avaliado. Depois, também, vão olhar para o mercado acessível. Ok, você pode estar a trabalhar com uma porção do mercado, mas você deve deixar claro que o mercado acessível é muito mais, é para além disso. Porque o investidor, quando olha, ele quer olhar para potencial crescimento. E para ele ter a oportunidade de crescimento, quer dizer que tem que haver um mercado acessível, um mercado que está ali, que possa ser alcançado. Depois, nós temos outro aspecto a olhar, é para os investidores em si, em termos de estruturas, as possibilidades do vosso produto, o que é que você já fez, o que é que você já engajou no mercado, o que é que você já arrecadou, que fundos você já arrecadou, que investidores já contribuíram no seu negócio, qual é a penetração que o teu produto ou serviço tem nesse mercado, enfim. Eles vão olhar, vão fazer uma análise como se diz, uma verificação do vosso histórico, basicamente, para saber como é que vocês se dão com possíveis investidores. E depois, obviamente, o vosso modelo de negócio tem que ser algo interessante, algo diferente do que existe. Trazer para a mesa algo que não é ainda praticado, algo diferente do que é feito. Ou seja, o vosso ponto único de venda deve estar aqui demonstrado. Então, esses são os critérios que são considerados pelos investidores quando vocês estão a olhar para arrecadar fundo para o vosso negócio. Portanto, prestar atenção nisso. Dr. Over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Papa and Nadia. So next we look at how do investors think. Maybe you can call this how do investors think part 2, because the first part was also really how are investors thinking, right? But here they're saying, who are the investors? Who are your target investors? If you're looking to raise capital, investors are also thinking in some way. They're looking, who are the target investors that you are looking at? Are they part of those target investors? You need to let them see that they are. And a few other things, they also say, what are the investment terms? They want to have a sense around what are those terms. Is it equity? Is it debt? You need to be clear. Equity is ownership. Debt is you're taking a loan and then you're paying back over time. There's an interest rate or there is an implied interest rate. But with equity, they have part ownership. And what does that part ownership translate to? We'll talk about that briefly. And how for them, investors are saying, how can this investment be invested? Or for them, they've invested, when will they get their monies back? Or when will they be able to exit this investment? They need to look at all of that. They're thinking around that. What are the potential returns, right? Beyond what you have told them. What are the other things that they see around this? Investors are trying to see a number of things. And they're also saying, if they're looking at the equity of the company, you say, what would this company be in future? What's the valuation of this company? What would the future valuation be of this company be, right? Would this company be more relevant or less relevant than it is today, right, in the future? These are just some of the things that investors will think about when you're talking to them, right? They're a lot more than this, but at least gives a sense around the way they will really be thinking. This, I think you can go on with the translation, Foucault.
Donc, comment est-ce que les investisseurs réfléchissent? Ça, c'est une question que vous devez vous poser. Et pour ça, vous devez savoir que les investisseurs, vous devez déjà pouvoir les cibler, savoir exactement quel type d'investissement vous avez besoin. Est-ce que ce sont des investissements en dette? Est-ce que ce sont des investissements en capitaux? Auquel cas, ils prennent une partie de votre entreprise, ce qui va prochainement les appartenir jusqu'à ce qu'ils retournent, jusqu'à ce qu'ils récupèrent leur argent. À ce moment-là, vous devez pouvoir déterminer quels sont donc les termes à mettre en place pour qu'on vous donne cet argent. Vous devez pouvoir définir comment est-ce que ces investisseurs collectent en retour leur argent et surtout, quel est le potentiel qu'ils peuvent gagner de cet investissement qu'ils ont fait au sein de votre entreprise. Donc, voilà globalement. Et pour finir, bien évidemment, vous devez avoir une idée de la valorisation de votre entreprise. Ce sont ces éléments clés qui vous permettent de bien canaliser la façon de réfléchir des investisseurs et de vous en sortir. Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, neste slide que nós vimos é a forma como o investidor pensa. Porque isso vai ajudar-vos a colocar-se no lugar do investidor. O que o investidor pensa? Quem é o vosso, a vossa meta em termos de investidor? Ok? Quais são as condições para esse investimento? É a segunda questão que surge. Depois, como é que esse investimento pode ser cultivado? É importante saber como é que ele pode ser cultivado e, obviamente, saber qual é o potencial de retorno. Como, em quanto tempo vai se ter o retorno. Ok? E depois, saber no futuro qual vai ser o valor da empresa. Quer dizer, eu se vou colocar o dinheiro, qual é o valor da empresa? Quer dizer, o que eu vou ter em retorno. É basicamente essa linha de pensamento do investidor e vocês devem levar isso em consideração sempre que forem preparar-se para buscar investimento através de um investidor. Ok? Sa, over to you.
All right, so the first one, you can say that, and you can give this translation afterwards. So what are the potential returns? Returns comes with risk. So what are the potential returns and the risk involved? But let's go on to the next slide. You can include that. So this is perhaps one of the last slides, but this is very important, right? And what is happening is when you're looking to raise capital, what is most important is for you to be prepared for due diligence. Remember that the new investors that you're looking to engage with, your business is new to them. You need to be prepared for what they'll be looking at, what they'll be asking for. Due diligence is always very important. We call it housekeeping. Regardless of wherever you are in life cycle, you need to be prepared for a due diligence. And generally, you say legal due diligence. What's the incorporation of the company? What are the corporate documents of the company? What are the filings that you have done in the company house, depending on the country? And what are the legal requirements for you to be in business, your license? Those are important, right? From a financial perspective, financial statements, tax, and tax review and due diligence, they're important. Are your books in orders? You have auditors. If the business has been on for a while, what's the financial statements like? What's your tax? Have you been up to date with your tax? What's the business model, right? Investors want to have a sense around what kind of business model do you run? And they want to look a bit into that business model, also look at your human resource. Who are the people? Who are your staff? What's the structure? What's the organogram like, right? And commercial due diligence also to look at what are the prices, what are the ways pricing is done for your products, and just look through. That will be looked at along with your business model review. A very critical point, even though that's put as a sixth one, is a background due diligence on the founders and management team. This is a very critical part. You remember when we talked about the 5 C's of credit? we said character is the most important of those 5 C's of credit. Even for the bank or the institution that's lending money to the company, character is critical. They do some due diligence, background due diligence on founders and management, even pension, private equity firm, venture capital firm, investors, these institutional investors in general, would always want to have a sense around who are the founders. They want to have a sense around the background of this founder. Sometimes they get third parties to do this check, and also the management team as well. What's the background like? Now, you need to have housekeeping to ensure that all this is in place. Sometimes it's as much as information on the company and what information is available online about you. Is that information in order? Is it in the right? How would you look at it from an investor looking at you? Would they just see a lot of scattered information? And it's important for you to do housekeeping, ensure that your books are in place, legal. Sometimes a number of times you're working with other third parties, legal advisors, tax advisors, financial advisors, subject to the stage of the company. In the early stages, you can do a lot of this internally, but also ensure that you have some help, some professional help from some consultants. And this helps to ensure that what you're putting out about you as you're preparing to engage with investors, even the pitch documents you're putting these things down in a professional manner. You also have to do some diligence on investors, right? It's a two-way thing. It's not just anybody that comes to you that you should say you're looking at accepting, right? You want to check some investors and see what's the stage of so for some investors, what business stage do they invest in? If they've invested in other companies before, you try and look and say, we walk through the 6 stages of life cycle of companies. What kind of companies do they invest in? Do you fit into that? It helps you to have a sense. Even sometimes you don't fit into it. You may be the first for them, but you want to have a sense around, do they have a focus? Some people don't have a focus in terms of life cycle stage, but they have some other criteria they look at. So you need to have a sense around what is that. And what type of investors are you looking at? Are you looking at just financial investors? Are you looking at strategic investors? Maybe some investors that are also further down your value chain, and they're able to invest because your business is critical to the value chain in which they are in as well. But different types, you also have to have a sense what kind of sector of the investors are you looking at, and the investors that you're looking at, what's their credibility? What's their reputation? You also need to do a diligence on them. You bring them on board, and if they have good credibility, good reputation with all that, it also you benefit from that. But if they have a negative credibility or they have issues, you also take that along with you, and you do not want that. So you want to be able to ensure that you're doing some diligence on their credibility and reputation as well. You also want to have a sense around those investors. What's their potential target exit date, right? If they're investing in equity, how long do they stay they're buying your shares, they're looking at being shareholders. How long do you think it takes for them to exit, or would they want to exit? Sometimes some funds will do 5 + 5. That means they can be invested for 5 years, and they can be an additional 5 years, making a maximum of 10 years. You have to have a sense around what type of time frame do they have. Now, you also want to get a sense, are they founder friendly? Because an investor invests in you, you're tied by the hip, right? You're joined by the hip to those investors. Are they investors? Look at other investments they've done before. Have they been friendly with the founders that they work with? Of course, you have to take that carefully in terms of business is business. They still need to work with you. You still need to be able to deliver appropriately, but are they business friendly? Are they maybe not business, are they founder friendly? Are they able to work with the founders of the business and support them appropriately? Look at some of the historical investments they've had. And what are the potential potential investors? Are they growth investors? Are they value investors, right? Are they investors that are looking at high growth opportunities? They want businesses that are growing high return in very high growth stages, right? Or are they value investors that are looking to buy very cheap and then sell high, right? And lastly, do you trust them? you must be able to have what's your gut feel on that, right? You're an entrepreneur, a lot of gut feel is what guides a lot of things you've done as well. Of course, with all the fundamentals, but in your gut, do you trust them? Because if they're coming in as equity investors, they are partners with you in ownership. If they're coming as debt investors, they have some stake, and they are also capital providers. Trust is critical in all of this, right? Just as you are also ensuring that your stakeholders, your clients, your customers, and all that, you build a lot of trust in them, in ensuring that you give them products and services that are appropriate and right, and there's trust in them, and that's why patronizing you. Also, the investors that are bringing on board need to trust you, and you need to trust them as well, that they're able to provide capital, and also subject to the other terms that come sometimes. Sometimes you come and they're also on your boards, or they are also advisors. You'd also need to ensure that there is trust. There's a matrix around trust around all of this. So I'll get. So I think Foko, you can translate now. Foko.
Ok, donc nous avons aussi comme élément tout ce qui est études et documentation qui puisse soutenir votre campagne de levée de fonds. Et à ce moment, nous avons pratiquement deux volets. Le premier volet, ce sont les diligences internes et toute la préparation que vous devez avoir. Et cette préparation, elle peut être faite par vous, bien idéalement par une tiers partie, c'est-à-dire un cabinet, un consultant, des avocats, des experts comptables et autres. Donc, il s'agit ici, par exemple, de mettre à disposition ou bien en bonne place tout ce qui est aspect légal de votre entreprise. Ça peut être les statuts, le registre de commerce et tout ça. Et ensuite, vous devez aussi avoir tous vos états financiers et vous devez avoir la non-redevance, c'est-à-dire vous devez être en règle avec les impôts. Bien évidemment, pour préparer votre levée de fonds, vous devez aussi apprêter votre modèle économique pour pouvoir le présenter, aussi bien que l'équipe de travail pour pouvoir aboutir à cela, sans oublier tous les aspects commerciaux de votre entreprise et tout l'historique, et surtout l'équipe de gestion ou de management de votre projet. Ce sont autant de choses que vous devez bien préparer et présenter. On appelle généralement ça les études, qui doivent être bien faites et bien présentées pour pouvoir les soumettre à vos investisseurs. D'un autre côté, vous n'allez pas vous adresser à n'importe qui. Il faut aussi faire un peu comme une enquête ou une étude pour pouvoir savoir qui sont les investisseurs vers qui vous devez aller, quels sont quels sont les différents centres d'intérêt, quels sont est-ce que ces investisseurs sont assez friands en termes de retour sur investissement, ou bien est-ce qu'on doit juste se contenter de ce qu'eux nous offrent. Vous devez aussi chercher des investisseurs parfois qui sont dans votre chaîne de valeur. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire que si vous avez des partenaires ou des investisseurs qui peuvent être des potentiels clients importants pour vous, clients stratégiques ou des fournisseurs stratégiques, il va de soi qu'ils auront un intérêt à ce que votre affaire marche. Ils peuvent soutenir votre campagne de levée de fonds. Donc, voilà globalement tout ce que vous devez avoir comme diligence à faire, et surtout, vous devez chercher des investisseurs en qui vous avez confiance, autant que eux aussi, ils voudraient que vous soyez des personnes confiantes. Ça, c'est l'aspect caractère qu'on a vu tout à l'heure dans les 5 C que les banquiers regardent. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Foko. Então, aqui temos uma lista de documentos que devem preparar-se para fazer quando vocês estão na busca do investimento, ok? Está dividido numa equipa de documentos que vocês de aspectos que vocês devem olhar para vocês mesmos, e depois, na segunda parte, nós temos aspectos a olhar para o investidor. O que é que vocês devem fazer? Devem procurar saber, preparar toda a documentação legal. Devem preparar todos os documentos financeiros, os comprovativos dos pagamentos dos impostos, enfim, tudo aquilo que é ligado às finanças, ao cumprimento da vossa obrigação para com o Estado. Vocês devem ter um modelo de negócio apresentado, devem apresentar ou fazer, ter a preparação do que é o vosso recursos humanos, porque isso vai ser verificado. Aspectos comerciais também vão ser verificados. Vai haver uma verificação a fundo do pessoal que está à frente da empresa, seja dono, seja da equipa de gestão da empresa. Todos esses vão ser vasculhados, verificados, para saber se tem o perfil certo. se não estão ligados a nada ilícito, se não têm queixas contra si, enfim. Portanto, todos esses aspectos vai ser verificado pela empresa, pela pessoa ou entidade que quer investir em vocês, e então vocês devem preparar-se, obviamente, antes do tempo, ok? A vossa imagem perante a internet tem que ser uma imagem digna. Se tiver algo que não deve estar, é melhor retirar. Enfim, tudo isso faz parte da preparação vossa. E depois, no respeito ao investidor, vocês também têm que verificar quem é com quem vocês estão a se unir. Portanto, vocês têm que entender esse investidor se é apropriado para vocês. Tem que olhar, vocês olham, sabem o ciclo, e nós vimos o ciclo de vida da empresa, e veja se esse investidor, ele já investiu noutra empresa antes, ok? Se investiu, essa empresa a qual ele investiu, em que etapa estava essa empresa? É na mesma etapa que vocês estão ou não? Ok? Vocês devem avaliar. Vocês devem olhar, saber qual é a credibilidade e reputação que esse investidor tem no mercado. O que é que ele tem feito? Ele normalmente tem cumprido as suas obrigações e tem obtido resultados nas datas preparadas. Eles são amigáveis ou agressivos e só está interessado em fazer dinheiro, não quer saber da empresa. Ok? Há a possibilidade de vocês crescerem com o investidor. Enfim, vocês fazem essa também uma verificação do que é o investidor para vocês saberem com quem vocês vão se deitar. Portanto, essa é uma guia em forma resumida. Ok? Sa, over to you.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, and we'll just wrap up, and I'll leave a few key items. So some of them we touched on. So key of all of this, we went through, the big picture, which you should always have. Don't lose sight of that. That is critical. The entrepreneurial growth also comes with a lot of its own challenges, but the big picture is key, and we are able to surmount those challenges, and you get support, professional support along the line is always important. Ensuring that you have the right parties working with you, but you can ensure that making sure that the big picture is right in front of you, is what you're working towards, is important. The growth mindset is important for that, and extending that to your entire institution, entire company is very important. Keeping that open learning, constant improvement, that ability to embrace challenges, and even viewing setbacks as opportunity for growth. And taking some concepts from there's a concept called anti-fragile, where even with challenges, you're able to surmount those challenges and even do better, right? Even being able to come out better even in tough environments. That is critical, right? We talked about a number of things around bootstrapping, getting funding from family and friends, getting funding from angel investors, venture capital, private equity, banks, and also through the capital market. We talked about business expansion, and we talked about the fact that to be able to achieve those business expansion objectives, you need to know exactly where you are in your company life cycle, knowing that very early stage, there's limits to where you get funding from. At the very early stage in the startup is really from bootstrapping, family and friends, and some crowdfunding. As you grow, the business gets to the growth stage, revenues are more positive, and earnings are still negative. You're still able to get seed funding, get venture capital, get some grants here and there. And as you go and become a high growth company, which is where your target is, high growth and mature growth will follow after. And a lot more institutional investors are able to look at, are able to put for funding in front of you. Venture capital, private equity, private debt, even bank financing will come in at that stage. And in some very early stages, you can even have some capital market opportunities also coming in there. And further down the line, as you grow, mature growth, more stable growth, of course, the decline is where there are less funding options, but those businesses have, that's not our focus for today. It's also important that your business presentation is well presented, is well, because that's the opportunity to sell yourself. You put that together very comprehensively, and you're able to deliver that. You practice how you're able to deliver that, and a lot is done to be able to make sure that you can achieve, even doing your business presentation, ensuring the bottom line is very clear, ensuring that there's passion in your delivery. You know, investors are looking, how are you delivering this, right? The passion in delivery is critical. Content has to be important, has to be great, and has to be short and concise and straight to the point. Practice on your presentation over and over. You only continue to get better. Ensure your content, you're able to sell yourself as the entrepreneur, sell the team, you're able to sell what is important about your product. Why is it different from what is there in the market? Give investors an opportunity to have a sense around what the financials are, and ensure the product gets in their minds, leave them with a lasting impression. Also remember, what is probably most important for investors is the management team. They must be able to see that there's experience, there's teamwork, there's leadership, and the culture within the team is superb. A lot of other things also are important from an investor perspective around what's the market, who are the other investors, what's your business model, what is the kind of returns that are in for them, what are the risks and the returns, and what is the expected valuation if they're coming in for equity. There has to be a lot of negotiations around your valuation. It's important. You do not leave money on the table. Make sure you have professional help in making those assessments. You also have to, in your borrowing as well, ensure you're not overpaying. Whether it's the interest rates that you're paying, you have to look at what is comparable in the market so that you negotiate. In everything you're doing with any investor, make sure you're negotiating well, right? Remember, I mentioned that as they're doing their due diligence, the investors will be looking at you for doing due diligence on you. But ahead of that, you have to prepare and ensure that with support, you have the right consultants working with you, also with your internal resource. Make sure you're ready for due diligence. And whilst you're ready for due diligence, also be doing due diligence on the investors as well. It's a two-way thing, but prepare for them and also do your own due diligence and ensure that you have the right partners working with you. I think we've already covered quite a bit, and I think it's been a very it's been a very good session. I'll let the interpreters interpret or translate this last bit, and then we'll take questions if there's time for questions. Thank you.
Ok, donc pour résumer, s'il faut retenir trois choses, c'est que vous devez penser grand, avoir une bonne idée de votre projet, de votre entreprise. C'est ça qui vous permet d'être résilient et vraiment engagé pour pouvoir atteindre vos objectifs et ne jamais abandonner. Deuxième chose, vous devez avoir une attitude de croissance, une façon de penser qui vous permet de savoir mettre vos forces au devant et d'embrasser les challenges. Troisième chose, vous devez avoir un esprit de croissance. Non, je veux dire, vous devez avoir les aptitudes pour pouvoir monter en puissance et mettre votre entreprise à une certaine échelle. Cette échelle, c'est celle que nous avons partagée avec vous. Il faut que votre projet soit capable de grandir, de se maturer au point de rentrer en bourse. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, em jeito de sumário final, o que é que nós temos, o que é que nós vimos hoje? Nós falamos que, tal como em qualquer o empreendedorismo é uma jornada que tem vários ciclos. E é preciso você sempre saber onde é que você se situa e sempre pensar no panorama mais amplo. Okay? Pense em grande. Okay? Segundo aspecto aqui a levar é a mudança de mentalidade. Você tem que ter uma mentalidade de crescimento e trabalhar nesse sentido, buscando sempre melhoria, abraçando os desafios de melhor forma que for surgindo, e tentar sempre buscar oportunidade de crescimento. O último aspecto é pensar em crescimento. Sempre agir de forma que vocês possam crescer, quer seja a ganhar mais mercado, quer seja aplicar soluções mais duradouras, sendo inovativos, sejam persistentes, coerentes no vosso trabalho e sempre olhem, se vão buscar o investimento, analisem em que ciclo vocês estão e qual é a melhor fonte de investimento para cada aspecto, cada momento do vosso ciclo de vida, ok? Então, é basicamente isso em sumário. Vamos receber uma ou duas questões e terminaremos a sessão. Obrigada. Doctor, over to you. It's Adaura.
Yes, it's me. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Badibo, for the insightful session. We had a lot of positive comments from the entrepreneurs. Thank you, TF, for this fascinating masterclass. Well done to our vibrant facilitator from Odutola GK. Obedience said this session is top notch. Well done, Doctor. Emmanuel Williams said, I love the company growth analysis slide. Now I know why we are here. Thank you, Doctor. While Afe Omotayo said, thanks for this session, Doctor. Teresa said, thank you, Doctor, for this wonderful masterclass session. Very educative. So just take 2 questions as we have run out of time, and then Foko will translate, then Dr. Badibo can take on from there. So this question is from Clinton. He said, sir, please, what role does valuation play in securing funding for a business? And how can entrepreneurs determine the value of their company? Also, please, can you explain the difference between debt financing and equity financing? Then the second question is from Anayo. He said, is it advisable to go for equipment loan while trying to scale one's business? And what are the disadvantages? Then we also had a lot of questions from entrepreneurs asking if they can get the slides after the session. Thank you. So Foko, please translate, then Doctor can take on from there.
Donc, on a eu beaucoup de remarques positives et de ça, il ressort 2 questions. La première question, c'est quelle est la place de la valorisation dans le processus de levée de fonds et entre la dette et l'equity dans l'ouverture de capital? Qu'est-ce qui est préférable? Ça, c'est la première question avec 2 volets. Et la deuxième chose, c'est, si j'ai bien suivi, est-ce qu'on peut aussi prendre des endettements avec directement du matériel? Donc voilà, de façon brute, les questions qui ont été posées. Nadia.
Thanks, Foucault. Então, temos 2 questões da audiência. A primeira era sobre o mercado financeiro, a diferença entre o mercado financeiro no que se refere à dívida e no que se refere a ações. Nós também tivemos a solicitação da apresentação que foi aqui partilhada hoje. O doutor vai responder à questão e vamos depois saber como é que será. Doctor, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the audience. And the 3 questions, yes, we've tried to do this presentation in such a way that the entrepreneurs are in different phases of their business. So we try to find the middle ground that will make it as efficient as possible. But valuation, like if you remember one of the last things I said, negotiation, you need to negotiate well from a valuation perspective. What's valuation? Valuation is what's the what of your company. What is your company worth, right? And I would first of all address the second question, which is equity and debt. So what is equity? Equity is ownership in a company. So like the shares you buy and sell on the stock exchange in your country, right? It's ownership of a company, of, you are as the entrepreneur, you're probably the majority shareholder, you're the ones that owns most of the company. Once you bring another person to have shares in a company, bring another entity, that person has an additional is an additional shareholder, has some stake in the business. So perhaps you have 70%, the other shareholder has 30%. That's just an example, right? And that is when we talk about equity. Now, that's where valuation comes in. If you own 100% of a company, another person is coming in and bringing in capital, there needs to be some valuation to be done, right? To be able to determine what's the stake that will be given to that person based on the amounts that's coming in. You need professional support or professional advisors to work with you to ensure that you get the right valuation support in negotiating with the investor, right? So consultants, financial advisors, like ourselves, investment bankers, would be the ones that would be best positioned to support your companies in those kind of opportunities, in those kind of situations, just to make sure that, and sometimes your finance team will have a CFO or head of finance that understands some of this, but generally you want advisors to support you in ensuring that you get the right deal. You get it right, because negotiation, there needs to be negotiations and back and forth, and that's really it. Now, On the debt side, debt is a loan. That's simply what it is. You borrowed $10 million. You borrowed maybe $500,000. You need to pay back in 10 months, right? And you're paying interest and some part principal every month, or you need to pay back in 1 year, or you need to pay back in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. There's a schedule to your repayment. At the end of the time that has been agreed, you repay back that investor, and you have no obligation to that investor again, right? For the equity investor, that investor is sitting on the table with you as a shareholder, right? What the person gets is dividend, right? So at the end of the year, after the profits, after tax, there's some dividend that's been declared. That's the return that comes to the equity investor. For the debt investor, it earns interest. So whether it's paid monthly or it's paid quarterly, the company has to pay that interest to that debt investor. And after you pay the interest and then you pay the principal, sometimes you amortize and you pay periodically, and then at the end of the period, or sometimes you pay at the end of the term. So bullet repayments, right? So you have a $500,000 loan. You're only paying interest, and then after 1 year you pay the whole 500,000, or you pay interest and some part of the 500,000 principal, and the principal reduces gradually towards over the 12-month period. That's an amortizing loan as it is. So those two are different, and then there's a lot of securities or that are in between, what we call hybrid, right? They have some form of characteristics of equity and some form of characteristics of debt, like a convertible loan. A convertible loan, for example, is a loan, and after a certain time, it can be converted to equity. So it stays in between. You call them hybrid, right? Sometimes you also say some preference shares would also be seen as convertible. But there's a whole lot in between equity and debt. So the last question is about equipment loan. Yeah, equipment loan is some form of loan as well, but the terms you need to be able to get. We need to look at it from a situational perspective. A lot of all of this needs to be looked at within the context of the company. So, and sometimes equipment loans are also okay to take on. The entity that's providing that loan is probably taking that loan as also security, taking that equipment as also some form of security, and they may also get some other collateral from you. But all is situational, and you need to work with professional advisors in doing all of this. As business entrepreneurs, you need to also understand, when you're listening to your advisors, listen to them, have an understanding of what they are putting on the table. You are the one that understands your business the most, but always be open to be able to listen. You talked about the growth mindset, be able to listen. The biggest companies in the world, right, have all different advisors working with them, providing advice. But as the entrepreneurs, as the ones management team running the company, you need to be able to take in all the inputs, run them through, see what is applicable for your business, and then be able to make a decision. Sometimes, something doesn't work for you because the fundamentals show that it doesn't work for you. But you need to take that process, and sometimes as you grow the business, it will subsequently now be able to work for you, right? But yeah, I think there's a lot to still look at, but it's always good to, when you're raising capital is very important. The capital raising process is very important, because successful capital raises will help your company grow, right? But you also have to make sure you manage that process very well, and you're able to take on capital that you can repay, take on risk that you can manage, and a lot of growth is always possible when all this is well done. Thank you very much. We would also try and see how we can update the slides so that some of these questions can be accommodated in a bit more depth before it's shared with everybody. Thank you.
OK, thank you, sir. Donc, pour les deux questions qui ont été posées, on va commencer par la valorisation, avant de parler de la différence qu'il y a entre la dette et l'ouverture de capital. Donc, la valorisation, en fait, c'est une façon de donner un prix à votre entreprise quand on veut la vendre. Parce que Lorsqu'on parle d'equity ou bien d'ouverture de capital, il est question pour vous de comprendre que lorsque vous êtes détenteur de 100% de votre entreprise ou bien d'un certain pourcentage, il peut arriver que vous ayez besoin des investisseurs additionnels, c'est-à-dire de nouvelles personnes qui doivent rentrer au sein de votre entreprise en termes de capitalisation. Dès lors, on procède à ce qu'on appelle l'ouverture de capital. Donc, c'est comme si vous vendez une partie de votre entreprise. À ce moment, il faut donner de la valeur à votre entreprise. C'est ça le rôle de la valorisation, c'est ça la valorisation. Donc, le docteur dit que vous devez pour cela faire recours à des experts. Il y a des consultants, des cabinets qui sont spécialisés dans la valorisation et ils sont à même à vous accompagner dans cette aventure d'ouverture de capital. Donc, pour ce qui est de la différence de la dette et l'equity, la dette, en fait, c'est un montant d'argent que vous prenez à une personne avec pour engagement de rembourser selon une certaine périodicité et pour un taux d'intérêt. Ça peut être un remboursement sous deux formes. Ça peut être un remboursement du capital et de l'intérêt en une seule fois, ou bien ça peut être un remboursement par étapes, c'est-à-dire qu'à chaque temps, vous remboursez une partie du capital et une partie, et les intérêts liés à cette partie du capital que vous déteniez avant. Ce qui fait que le montant des intérêts qui sont généralement annuels vont diminuer au fur et à mesure que vous allez amortir, que vous allez rembourser une partie de la dette. Donc, ça, c'est pour ce qui est de la dette. À ce moment-là, vos remboursements, que ce soit le montant d'argent que vous avez pris à la personne ou bien les intérêts, ne tiennent pas compte de vos résultats. Vous devez obligatoirement rembourser. Par contre, pour ce qui est de l'ouverture de capital, lorsque vous prenez de l'argent aux gens en contrepartie de vos actions, à ce moment-là, ils sont tenus autant que vous aux bénéfices. S'il y a des pertes, ils vont compatir. S'il y a des bénéfices, ils vont avoir leur part de bénéfices. Donc, c'est la différence qu'il y a entre l'endettement et l'ouverture de capital. Et généralement, on va vous conseiller plus lorsqu'on est une start-up ou bien lorsqu'on est une entreprise qui démarre ses activités, on va vous conseiller de plus procéder par ouverture de capital que par endettement. Parce que l'ouverture de capital est totalement avantageuse. Ça permet qu'il y ait des personnes qui prennent des risques avec vous. Donc, pour ce qui est maintenant d'investissement en matériel, oui, c'est aussi une forme d'investissement. Vous pouvez vous rapprocher des fonds ou bien des institutions qui mettent à disposition du matériel. Ça peut être le leasing. Ça peut être le leasing. En français, on appelle le crédit bail, qui vont vous mettre à disposition du matériel au lieu de vous donner de l'argent. Donc, c'est bien évidemment des formes de financement et il est toujours important pour vous de vous rapprocher des experts et des consultants afin qu'ils puissent vous conseiller quel type de financement vous aurez besoin. Merci. Over to you, Nadia.
Nadia has dropped off because she has internet issues. Okay, sir. That'll be all for now. Thank you so much for this engaging session. So, sir, do you have any last words parting words for the entrepreneurs before we end the session? So you can stop sharing your screen so we can see you clearly.
Okay, let me stop sharing, stop share, okay. Okay, so I think what I'll probably say is I've mentioned a number of things, but I think what is also important is trust. There's a nexus of trust. The same way you cultivate the trust with your customers, as the same way you cultivate the trust with your investors. And also, what is key in capital raise is network. Relationships are key, and networking is super important, right? Even an investor that doesn't go along with your Series A, Series B might subsequently come in at your Series C. And when I mean your first time trying to raise capital doesn't come on, second time doesn't, but at every point in time you're engaging investors, keep relationships, even if they do not invest, right? They are mentally, subconsciously tracking your progress. And everybody that you engage is a potential investor in the future, right? So this is a long-term game. This is a marathon. And you must always play for the long term. Anything you're doing and any investor you're bringing in should be an investor that will unlock more investors in the future as well. So look at it from that perspective. It's a long-term game. And from experience working with a lot of different entrepreneurs at different times, if you stick to it and do this professionally and take on, even when the challenges come, there's always the positive side to all of this. And it's important because, you're using this to scale your business. So I wish you all the very best. Ensure you negotiate well, ensure you get professional support, but ensure you do your homework, and also always practice. Just continue to ensure you refine the process at every point in time. Thank you, and all the best.
OK, thank you, sir. Donc, comme mot de clôture, le docteur revient sur la confiance. Autant vous devez avoir confiance à vos investisseurs, autant vos investisseurs doivent pouvoir avoir confiance en vous. Donc, il recommande que lorsque vous avez une entreprise, il faut beaucoup tenir compte des parties prenantes. Tous ceux qui interviennent autour de vous doivent être des personnes qui doivent avoir confiance en vous parce qu'à tout moment, ils peuvent intervenir dans votre entreprise. Ça peut être soit sous forme de dette, soit ils sont des clients, soit ils sont des fournisseurs, soit ils sont même des actionnaires. Donc, c'est important pour vous de bâtir la confiance autour de vous. Et l'une des clés, c'est le réseautage. Soyez connectés à des gens. Soyez ouverts et partagez vos idées, partagez vos expériences afin que les gens puissent avoir une bonne idée de vous, afin d'avoir une très bonne notoriété. Et surtout, n'oubliez pas la connectivité ou les réseaux sociaux. Vous devez savoir que les investisseurs, avant de venir vers vous, vont forcément aller vous checker sur Internet pour savoir si vous avez une bonne e-reputation. Qu'est-ce qu'on pense de vous sur les réseaux sociaux? C'est pour ça qu'on dit toujours, comportez-vous bien quand vous êtes sur Internet, quand vous êtes sur les réseaux sociaux. Donc, globalement, c'est une affaire de confiance. Merci d'avoir assisté à ce masterclass et vivement la prochaine. Over to you, Adaora.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Badigo, for this insightful session. Thank you, Foko. Thank you, Nadia, for staying through to the end of the session. So, dear entrepreneurs, remember to have a growth mindset, be constantly open to learning, work on your pitch, and view failure as an opportunity for growth, and as well play for the long term. I learned a lot from this session, and I'm sure you all did too. So, we look forward to seeing you at the next masterclass session. And thank you again. You receive the slides after it has been cleaned up, as mentioned by Dr. Badibo. Thank you all and have a great day. Bye.